Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Wells. Thank you so much for joining us here on today's episode. Here's what we got for you. The Omicron shift in Europe, pandemic or endemic? Endemic, that is the question in the New York Times. Talking about Europe, really, and how they are moving to possibly learn to live with the virus and how that is going for them. Want to, break down all possible options on that front, which I think in a lot of ways could seem very appealing to many Americans. Also, as Biden continues to kind of be on all sides, head spinning with some pretty severe criticism from both wings of his party. Over on the left, one of the people being floated as one of the best primary challengers to Biden is the Bernie Sanders former congressional candidate for the Democratic nomination in Ohio's 11th, I believe, or 17th or something like that. Nina Turner on TV today going hard on Joe Manchin, and it is a good, satisfying clip. We don't do those often, but we'll bring that to you as well. And a very special and very, very interesting report on the former ambassador to Haiti and the presidents in March, the Haitian president in March, leaked messages. 4 months later, Jovenel Moise was assassinated. This is after the former ambassador, talking about the prime minister, saying put him aside and embrace the prime minister option in this leaked messages. Suspicion here of an American involvement is growing. Actually, we're gonna be saving the Nina Turner clip for last. Let's get into it. Let's do Splash. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Starting with this Omicron shift here in Europe, which is very interesting. In Britain, France, and Spain, and other countries around Europe, politicians and some public health experts are pushing a new approach to the coronavirus pandemic, born of both boldness and resignation that the illness is becoming a fixture in daily life. And again, for most people who are doing the right thing with getting vaccinations, it's not going to be that bad. I think that, it really is, as long as, and it's very fair with everyone. I pretty much started working just doing normal things probably less than 7 days after I tested positive first time for COVID. And I was just in the doctor's office today. Thank you very much. And no myocarditis right here. I was going probably, day 5 through 14. And, that is not to say that it is not different for, everybody. And, it's not a very serious problem. And that's why, everybody. And that's what I really think the biggest thing is here with the American healthcare system. That is a very real threat. Like, you're not going to be in the accurate care that they need. And disproportionately, the bad long-term effects are going to fall on the working class here. That is going to be, I think, a very, very real problem. But, what is the solution to that? Is that to, just really at this point just basically deny science about, what the reality of this thing is and how unlikely it is with the proper care? Or is it to make sure that fight like hell, to give the proper care to as many people as possible? So I kind of think it's the second one. So anyway, governments are seizing a moment in which their populations have experienced less severe illness, and in some instances a drop in new daily cases after weeks of record growth, and some are moving their mitigation policies off emergency footing. In Spain, for instance, Pedro Sanchez, the PM there, declared last week that citizens would have to learn to live with it, as we do with many other viruses, which is true, with the flu shot and all of that. Smallpox, you get the vaccine for that very early, you're done. Nice and easy. And there really just has been no evidence of, I think the fishiest stuff that ever happens with the vaccination thing is just big pharma pushing, boosters, too early and, being a little bit manipulative with the data, and kind of not really even with the data, really, with the public rhetoric towards it and the lobbying, to make people get unnecessary shots over and over and over and over again. And I don't think, it's going to really have major health effects, but it's just profit for all the wrong people, which is, never a good thing to encourage in any kind of healthy system. So that is why, I think I'm a little bit skeptical of, some of these really kind of blatant remarks that these CEOs have made. But when it comes to the shots, there's no arguing. It's like inconceivable to me absolutely inconceivable how anybody could argue with like the effectiveness of all this stuff. Like my parents, like in all of this, like we have 4 kids and 2 parents in my family, and we were all tested positive at some point or another, except for my parents who got the booster. Like this stuff actually like really genuinely does work, and it is very, very encouraging. Like it's a good thing to celebrate. It has been. I think with the Omicron variant situation, it's been extremely much more good news than bad news. And so the country should adjust the national approach to more closely align with how it handles influenza outbreaks. Oliver Véran, the French health minister, recently said that France's high level of infection and a strong vaccination rate could maybe mean that this would be the final wave. The shift comes even as the WHO cautioned this week that treating the virus like the seasonal flu, saying it was too soon to make that call, not really ruling it out. Much about the disease remains unknown, the WHO said, and a surge in cases driven by the Omicron variant is still battering the continent, while much of the population of the world remains vulnerable because a lack of widespread vaccination. I think the 2 biggest that should be priority number 1, and I think at this point, I really do not get why all these people, all these scolds in the media who love scolding people and, as a sign of their personal virtue, why not turn it on any force worldwide in any way? Like, hold the concerts, I don't even know why I'm thinking of just concerts, but just start the campaigns, do whatever to stop the forces preventing worldwide, cheap, free, free vaccinations to people all over the world. Like, the fact that has not happened already, that is the biggest factor, creating these new variants. And what if one is more deadly next time around? It's very possible. Like, that is not anything you want to have happen, and it just creates more cases and more chaos and more death for the third world. And this is just absolutely horrific stuff that this is going on, and that nobody's paying attention. Nobody's calling out the real reason why a lot of this stuff is happening. And Southern Africa is where this variant originated, in one of the least vaccinated parts of the world. So I don't know. Sub-Saharan Africa not exactly doing great financially. And so I don't know, what is the big point? If you're looking for a thing to do, instead of freaking out about people in the store, why not talk about what is really going on here? I like Biden. I think he is kind of relented a little bit on this. I do understand also the EU to be a big obstacle, but I think the lack of widespread vaccination is a huge, unbelievable, number 1 crime that is not being fixed. And then I think getting that and getting those vaccinations, getting that stuff out, getting people vaccinated, and all over the world, and that causing the cases to go down and the cases that happen to be less severe. Then eating those restrictions once more and more people are vaccinated, then that is the right thing to do. I think that's just the sensible path. But it is really, instead of just saying that, within the context of our own Western day-to-day lives about, which movie theater we can go to, or do we have to wear a mask indoors at the baseball game, or outside of the baseball game, or whatever, when you're not eating or drinking, or but the fact that this is being held up is just so unbelievable to me. That is, we will do further stories on that here on Newsflash. Mark my words, because that's crazy. So advocates here of the learn to live with it approach point out that the latest surge in cases is different from the early use of the virus in several important ways, including a largely vaccinated population in parts of Europe, especially in the West, and a far lower rate of hospitalization. So I think that is a very big, true point, and that's just true everywhere, and that is what benefits of vaccination and what is supposed to happen with a virus and effective vaccination campaign. But the problem is, again, that is just not being carried over to other places, and that is why death happens, and that's why variants happen. More and more. We're seeing it, folks, more and more. It's not good. The sentiment is evident in evolving policies that the British government has adopted since the start of the year, a stark departure from the war footing that the country's health service preached in December. The health service preached that, but as we're finding out now in Britain, the government was not practicing that. That is for sure. The changes include shorter isolation periods and elimination of pre-departure tests for people traveling to England, largely because Omicron was so already prevalent. The test had a limited effect on its spread. There were some concrete signs that Britain may be turning the corner. But yeah, so like a lot of these spikes that we're seeing are very, very high, but they also fall just as fast. It's kind of like a very sharp peak, and then you come down. It can't be an emergency forever, says Graham Medley, professor of infectious disease modeling at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, told BBC Radio 4 this week. He added that the end of the pandemic was likely to occur in phases rather than appear at an active point in time when it can be declared over. Amid this shift, the messaging to the public is varied, often in confusing ways. The guidance can be all over the map, with some politicians declaring the latest wave over and others advocating a gradual return to normalcy. And, I think a lot of, it's either extreme fear or like extreme, like freedom to die rhetoric, which I kind of see myself a little bit more towards the, I hate to say it, like the because they both sound so bad, but I see myself a little bit more towards like the COVID hawk side, a little bit more. But I would say I'm generally kind of pretty central in terms of like restrictions and just pretty much the policy that I outlined. I think in terms of vaccinations, and getting life back to normal, because there's just no reason to have any of these like crazy restrictions that aren't really happening in much parts of America anyway. But it's much more about I guess it's just like a sense of normalcy. It's just like we're gonna be really back to. It's like a mental. So much of it I think is really a mental thing, because if you're going back into a store, like the nice period in the summer, and really before Delta got up again, and Omicron following that, when you were actually able to like relax and like take your mask off, and not just like you wouldn't have to go through the. It's so stupid, but you wouldn't have to like go through the formality of like putting on the mask and walking to your table, taking off the mask, and keeping off the mask for like the rest of the entire time you're there. Like, or you wouldn't have to go to the mask in the store and just like wear it for like 5 minutes when you buy something like a snack or whatever. Like that, it really isn't that big of a thing, because so much of life is normal, I think, at this point. And the school closings and stuff like that, they're like, they're temporary. I really do think that they're temporary. Like, why? There is nobody out there actively supporting any of this stuff, but it really, I think it does for certain people. So certain people, it really is just like a mental thing. Like, yes, America's back, and it's going to be interesting to see, how much of that. I think it's going to be, probably come, most likely closer and closer to reality. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners of the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, happy holidays, and thank you so much for supporting us this year. We are willing to give the gift of audio to you this holiday season, and boy, will it keep coming. We have an action-packed schedule through the 17th of December to the 16th of January, and that all starts with new episodes of Newsflash Now 3 times a week on our old summer schedule of Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. In addition, Hidden History returns with 6 select episodes, 4 on Tuesdays and 2 on select Thursdays, to give you the perfect historical narrative to keep you interested through those times with the family this holiday season. It's been such a great year, and it couldn't have been as good for the Spencer Walsh Radio Network without your support. So, to another year of great audio. We do really have a very, very interesting story to talk about here on Newsflash, because this is The Intercept here today with Ryan Grimm. He's writing about this. So this Haitian situation, so it's at a little noticed Foreign Affairs Committee hearing in March 2021, headlined Policy Recommendations on Haiti for the Biden administration, where a former ambassador to Haiti recommended that the best way to deal with the troublesome President Jovenel Moise was to put him aside and embrace something she called the prime minister option. So, again, president versus prime minister, the U.S. was unsatisfied with Moise, and as new elections approached amid a deteriorating on-the-ground situation, wanted a faster transition. It would be nice if he would step down, but I don't think that's going to happen, said Ambassador Pamela White at the hearing under questioning from Ted Deutsch of Florida. White was a foreign service officer from Haiti from 1985 to 1990. He served as ambassador from 2012 to 2015. That's under the Obama administration there. So I think if we sort of put him aside, in the best of all worlds, and we have a prime minister appointed that is non-corrupt, non-corrupt, in the American government sense of the word, you can take whatever you want from that. That is not from the political sector, is not from the private sector. There are several really good candidates. I'm not going to name them, but there are several. White appears to mean put aside in the hypothetical sense, discussing the future of Haiti without the former president as an obstacle, but the phrase takes on new meaning given his assassination in July at the hands of Colombian mercenaries alleged to be organized by elements of the Haitian elite. The comments have circulated among Haitians online, heightening suspicion on the island. The U.S. approved the operation against Moise. So no one in their right mind would think it had anything to do with his assassination, White told The Intercept. If this were to be true, it does seem like it's something, that is like pretty lightly spoken of, for it to be talked about, this way in kind of like a hearing, for it to be out there. I do not want to clarify a statement that was very clear. I've been proven right. Moise was not presidential material. It doesn't look like it. Oops. He told he lost support of the Haitian people with reason. After his predecessor, Jocelyn Prévert, left office less than a year. How about that for pronunciation? Less than a year after the provisional president, Moise was sworn in as president in February 2017 for a 5-year term. While his opposition maintained he should have had 5 years after the previous president left, Moise argued that the February 2021 expiration of his tenure was premature and that he planned to remain in power until new elections were held. We covered that in when it happened in Newsflash. So on July 5th, Ariel Henry, a neurosurgeon, again, someone not from the political or private sector, allied with former President Michel Martelly, was named prime minister by Moise. Henry, who had moved in and out of government, but was most recently on the commission overseeing the country's COVID-19 response, had previously been a member of the Council of Sages, a group of 7 Haitian leaders propped up by the United States. 2 days later, Moise was gunned down in his bedroom, and Henry began jockeying to become the nation's de facto leader from the prime minister position. A prosecutor charged with investigating the assassination revealed that immediately after killing, Henry had 2 phone calls with Joseph Badio, a former Haitian justice official accused of having run the operation. So interesting. The plot's financier, Rodolphe Jarre, was arrested Friday in the Dominican Republic at the request of the United States. Jarre, a Haitian businessman who previously had been convicted of drug trafficking, has served as an informant for the DEA. DEA, that could just be, the CIA or anything like that would never talk to him. So he told the New York Times that he participated in what he thought was a kidnapping, not an assassination, because he was told it had the approval of the United States. If the U.S. government was involved, then it was safe, Jarre said. Sorry, nope, not for you, buddy. The Times maintained no evidence has emerged of U.S. government involvement. Yeah, no evidence at all. As the Intercept reported in July, the Colombian mercenaries who carried out the hit were hired by a Florida-based firm. At least 7 of them received training by the U.S. military. Again, all these things, they're just there. It just happens like that. They just all bonded in the military, became friends that way. At the March hearing, after saying there were several quality candidates for the prime minister position who could take power if the president was to, quote, be put aside, White suggested that the next step would be to create the country's electoral council, or the CEP, with enough legitimacy to stabilize the government. The CEP had been overseeing elections since the 2004 U.S.-backed coup that ousted Jean-Bertrand Aristide, a left-wing a proponent of a liberation theology who became Haiti's first democratically elected president in 1991. After a different coup ousted him later that year, he returned to the presidency from 1994 to 96 and through 2001 to 2004. Then we have this summit that we get to. We put the old CEP. We put out the old CEP. Then we have a summit where the actors come back to the table and we discuss how we can get right representation to inform it to have a CEP that is credible. So pretty much, get reestablish the institution. Well, I told The Intercept the situation in Haiti had spun out of control, but she was not involved. The entire saga is just unbelievable. You have more than enough nefarious characters to investigate, but she says, I am not one of them. The problem is with the transitional governments, White said at the hearing, the problem with the transitional governments is then we're in a mess again, and it slows down everything here. I wrote a piece, or talked about for a piece in the New Yorker a couple years ago, when I said I think that is exactly what we need, but I think right now we could use the prime minister option. White had been responding to a question from Deutsch, who argued that no election be considered legitimate if it was overseen by Moise. Paradoxically, he just suggested the president needed to be removed in defense of democracy. So, yeah, makes sense. So he pretty much asked the question, Ambassador Wright, that I have for you is: if the provisional electoral council cannot meet the standards of being free, fair, and credible, but the current president does not step down, how can Congress and the Biden administration and the international community play a responsible role in ensuring that any election that is held is credible and legitimate, and then facilitating the public acceptance of the results and in mediating between the Moise administration and the opposition? White's response to Deutsch was, the second time in her testimony, that she suggested Moise here should be put aside, which buttresses the idea that she was talking about how Haitian politics could unfold in his absence, not necessarily that violently creating his absence ought to be an objective. It is difficult for me to imagine having successful elections this year in Haiti, putting aside for the moment the question of President Moise should have left in February, or should he leave next February. I do not know the answer, but I do not believe that right now the necessary institutions are in place to ensure a smooth transition. So saying the OAS, the UN have all stated Moise's term ends in 2022, but several Haitian constitutional experts, as well as Harvard, Yale, and NYU law school clinics, disagree. So, so there's a bit of a debate on that, with some very clear sides. But I'm not trying to say Moise should be around any longer than the Haitian people allowed, and clearly they did not like him. But yeah, this is a very interesting discussion to watch, into like how much of a force. A force of nature, and point of discussion this was at all in the United States government. Was it being discussed casually? Was it being discussed seriously? Was it being discussed at all? Should be a subject, I think, very much for future reporting, and I really do trust organizations like The Intercept to do it.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's News Flash.
All right, so we got a very fun situation here in the wake of this whole Joe Manchin voting rights situation, and it is not going well at all for Joe Manchin's aide. I don't know who the hell. Jonathan Cott is the name of this guy on CNN Noonday with Breonna Keelier. And Nina Turner is from, obviously the Bernie Sanders campaign, ran for Congress, unfortunately unsuccessfully. That was tough. Oh, it still pains me. But here she is, again, progressive was not going to get any credit for doing this. I think it's a, kind of strategy weakness going with the Democratic Party here, but she is really going in a pretty exasperated way here, taking the case to the people. I'm going to react and, maybe do a little bit of critiquing, but probably a lot of applause for Nina here, who, by the way, again, should be a part of any plans for Biden that he, obstacles the left should put in his way in 2024. I think Nina Turner should be involved in that. And she's made some spicy comments of that effect recently, so it's good.
Reaction to, look, what really appears to be voting rights legislation dead.
I mean, this is a sad day. We're in the 21st century, Brianna. We're not in the 20th century, the 19th century, the 18th century. And this is really a sad day, a sad time for democracy. And although the African-American community certainly shoulders an enormous burden when it comes to voting rights because of the historic import of how we had to fight and people had to die to get those rights, this is an attack, make no mistake, on every single person in this country, particularly the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class. An absolute sad day that you have senators that would rather hold on to the filibuster than to hold strong for democracy in the United States of America. Sad indeed.
Jonathan, what do you say?
Yes, we need to pass Voting Rights Act. Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema's positions on the filibuster hasn't changed. They don't think it's good for the Senate and the country overall. And they're worried about what might happen when Republicans take back control of the Senate, which, by the way, isn't that far off. It was only 2 years ago they had complete control.
I'm sorry. How about you just change it back? Like, how about you just change it back before the election? Like, is that not allowed? I don't understand the point. And again, it's not like they would not do they're Republicans can get something done whether you like it or not. Like, they're going to do it over your dead bodies, so you may as well just get it done.
So they're looking to preserve how the Senate works and force them to work in a bipartisan way. But Senator Manchin completely agrees that we need to reform our voting.
It's not like they're acting here in good faith. They have fundamentally refused to come to an agreement. They've backtracked, switched off, gone all over each other on their, positions on these various issues. But they, to be fair to them, they have been pretty kind of consistent on the filibuster. He said a little bit about the talking filibuster. You mentioned I think it should be a talking filibuster, but then you got Sinema there to stop it. That's why it's so good to have two of them in this Senate with the numbers. It is very, very appropriate. But anyway,
voting rights in this country, and he's working on it, and he's working on a bill, and he's hoping that he can get 9 more Republicans. But these things aren't easy, and they take time.
Nina, what do you make of that sort of preservation? Yes.
Preservation, my behind, Brianna. Look, we need to preserve democracy now. So I
really think that Nina Turner here is not just channeling the left. She's channeling, which I think is very important here, especially if she, in a Democratic primary situation, especially if Joe Biden does not make it, and the primary field is wide open, which it's, I think very well should be the case. Like the fact that if Nina Turner comes in there and she is saying this and she is channeling the rage of the Democratic base and an ineffective Democratic administration, I really think that could be effective, because if you look at some of these posts and these kind of mainstream Democratic accounts talking about Nina Turner, it was like one of these like big liberal clips accounts tweeting the stuff out today, and there were a bunch of like resistance, like, okay, Nina, let's go. This is what I like to see, because they are pissed off too. They're not getting what they want to hear, and it is going to hurt them. It's going to be bad.
Disagree with my colleague here. They better not utter not one quote from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not one, or any of his colleagues and contemporaries as we come up on his birthday on Saturday and the national celebration on Monday. These people are cowards. They are soulless cowards to hold up a daggone rule. Filibuster is a rule. It's not written in the Constitution. It's not a right. It is a rule, and they're standing in the way of it. So this is nonsense. They worried about what the Republicans going to do. Let's take care of 2022. Let's do what Democrats can do right now. They have the power. And my message to President Biden, now he done wasted a whole bunch of time with these folks, being diplomatic, inviting them out to the White House and to time out for it. He needs.
And again, I think really the questions for these people, of like the Nina Turners of the world, like the AOC, I don't even know if we can say the AOCs of the world at this point, is like, when are they going to start to realize that Joe Biden is not actually like serious about any of this stuff and call it out, and like, fundamentally call it out? The Democratic Party is a completely ineffective agenda or a vehicle for any of this stuff, because they just fundamentally don't want to do it. It's not like, oh, they don't have the will, they're too weak, they're too afraid. No, they had no intention of it in the first place. And the fact that they, they're calling them out in this kind of situation is just like, you eventually it's so meaningless the rhetoric is so meaningless without action, and we here on the left are so action starved. Yeah, so let's get into this.
He's to hold a press conference. Let them know. Either you're going to be by my side saying you're going to be with me and getting rid of the filibuster, or I'm gassing up the jet on your behind, and I will be in Arizona and West Virginia directly and let the American people know who's standing in the way of my entire agenda, not just voting rights. So President Biden, gas up the jet and cancel student debt. Those two things.
Jonathan?
That's not how Congress works. President Biden has a long history of working with senators. He knows the best way to do it is work with them, have constructive conversations.
Again, like, this is just, how long are we going to be continuing to take this kind of crap from these type of people? Like, it is, like, it's unbelievable. Like, Joe Biden is fundamentally incapable. Like, it's almost like he's a former advisor, Joe Manchin. Like, he's probably been in the room for like similar kind of situations, maybe with Obama or something like that. Where a bunch of Democratic people have been yelling at Joe Manchin, and Joe Manchin sits back and eats it all up because he doesn't care and he doesn't need to care. Because Joe Biden's not going to do anything to fundamentally threaten him at all, because he's just not serious about getting this agenda. And really, again, it's all becomes down, like, who's the one who's getting really played? Is it Joe Biden? Is it the entire Democratic agenda here? I mean, because they're definitely going to lose power. But is it really, the progressives who are enabling all this when they don't necessarily have to be, and are claiming to be, so into a better agenda? Just some interesting things as we close this out. All right, that's all we got for you today. I may be looking into a new season of Hidden History very soon as we close out the third, get into a full-length fourth season. Going to be very, very exciting. Keep you posted on that.